to the November 16th, 2023 meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. I am John Dixon, Chairman of the Plan Commission. At this time, I'd like to ask members of the commission to introduce themselves, starting with my left.
Barrett Davy.
Jamie Moorhead.
Mark Pasquazi.
And from the Lake Forest City staff, we have Miss Kathy Cernak here tonight. The next item before the commission this evening is consideration of the commission minutes from the September 13th and October 18th, 2023 meetings. Are there any comments, questions, or clarifications on either set of minutes?
I would just say I sent some grammatical changes, corrections to the September 13th, 23 minutes, but there was nothing substantive.
Okay. Other than those changes that Commissioner Davy noted to city staff, it sounds like they were non-substantive. Do I have a motion to accept the September 13th and October 18th meeting minutes?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
The first and only matter before the commission this evening is the continued consideration of a request for approvals to the development of the vacant property located on the southeast corner of Waukegan and Everett Roads. The proposal is for a multifamily residential building with detached garage, a coffee shop, and a drive-through. Special use permits and variances are requested. At this point, I'd like to ask the commission members if there are any conflicts of interest or any ex parte communications in this matter.
No.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to swear in everyone who thinks they might want to either speak in support or in opposition of this matter or any other matter on the agenda this evening. If you would please stand where you are and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. And with that, I will ask the petitioner and their team to come forward to the podium for their presentation, not to exceed 20 minutes, and welcome back. Please state your name.
My name is Jack Frigo, and Kathy, before you start the timer, if you let me just get oriented on the screen so I know what material we have here. 1 second here. Thanks, by the way, thank you for scheduling this meeting. I know it's a little off schedule, but it's important for us to meet with you. So Kathy, is this?
I would just ask, as you're getting started there, Mr. Frigo, if we could just, the commission is familiar with your plans for the development of this site. I think we would ask, to show or highlight the differences from the September meeting, the September 13th meeting when you were last before us. If you could just highlight those.
Yes, Commissioner Dixon, that's what we're going to spend our time on, or the few minutes that we have.
Great, thank you.
One moment.
Yeah, technical difficulties.
A few moments ago. There you go.
Thank you.
Forward, backwards.
Thank you. Again, thank you, and we're happy to be here and
Welcome back.
be able to review the changes that we've made based on the conversations that we had and the recommendations that you had and comments that you made, as well as comments by the public. We've read the staff report. We know that a lot of work goes into reviewing these projects, and Kathy and her team did a great job. We agree with about 85% of it. There are numerous items that could benefit by some clarification, but we don't have time to deal with those. But if any of those items come up, we're happy to talk about it. What I'd like to do...
Could you adjust the microphone?
Like so?
For the viewers that are watching online, Mr. Frigo, thank you. The microphone
Thank
there.
you. Okay. What I'm going to do is get us to, as I said, there were a number of suggestions that you had, and so we went back and we made a number of modifications in response to those concerns and suggestions. And while there were three basic points that came from the meeting, and that was the apartment building is too tall, the site is circuitous and there's not enough parking, and that the site is too tight. So first, I'd like to address the site is, or the building is too tall. And you can see by this image here, the orange overlay, the line at the top, is the configuration of the medical office building that was approved. And the peak of it was 49 feet. The peak of this is 49 feet. The actual roof of this building is slightly higher than the actual roof of the medical office building. This is 4 floors versus the 3-floor medical office building, and for obvious reasons, the structure of the medical office building and the mechanical distribution system and so on requires more floor-to-floor height. The apartment building doesn't require the same height. So one of the important changes that we made in response to your comments was we reduced the requested height from 54 feet to 49 feet. So we match our previously approved building. This shows some relationships to some of the buildings in the market. We are the one on the right. The others are not rooftops; they're tower elements or lighted elements. We were at 54 feet. We're now at 49 feet, as I mentioned, matching the height of the medical office building. The other item I'd like to address is the site is too tight, and Nick Patera from Tesca will deal with that in more detail. We'll show you the specific changes that we made, but let me go to different. I'll leave it at this. Yeah, this has some of the data. It's a little bit hard to read. But basically, we exceed the open space requirements per code, we exceed the green space requirements per code, and we have far less lot coverage than is required by the code. Nick will deal with the site plan modifications, and Lue Abuna from KLOA will also deal with some of those issues as well. We adjusted a number of the turning radius so we could provide for, say, better turning for the fire trucks and make the site easier to navigate. So we'll deal with that. A couple of additional comments, and that is, Nick, let's see if I can get to this. The Gaywald Hamilton engineer indicated that the driveway on the east side of the 1025 West Everett building was too narrow and that it needed to be 24 feet or else it wouldn't be acceptable. This is 18 feet right now. That's my car on the right and that's Mariani's truck on the left, and they pass easily. That has worked for the past 30 years. We're expanding that driveway from 18 feet to 20 feet. We're not developing this in a cornfield. We have got some constraints on the site, and so we believe that this works, and so we would ask for that consideration as we move forward. A couple of other comments, and that is that we comply with almost all of the comprehensive plan goals. We'd like you to consider that. We comply with most of the zoning regulations, certainly the use, not the height, but the use and many of the other zoning elements. This is a challenging site. What we would like you to consider is that we'd like to develop the site in 2024 instead of 2034. The recommendation of the staff to deny this and that it wasn't quite ready for a vote, we would respectfully ask for a vote this evening. And we're prepared to move on to the city council, but we'd like you to think about what we comply with and how we could actually move forward with this project next year, and not be so rigid that we have, say, perfection being the enemy of a really good site plan. You've seen a lot of different plans over the past years here, And we have a lot of confidence in our plan and our team. So I'd like Nick Patera to address a number of the site plan changes that we've made. Thanks. Here's a timer, by the way.
Thank you, Jack. My name is Nick Patera, and I have one who has worked together on this for almost 15 years of doing multiple different plans, but I want to focus on the changes that we've made since the September meeting. The red boxes that you see on the plan, those are curb reductions. We've actually made extensive studies on turning movements, running fire truck, running vehicles through the site. So one of the questions that was asked by the commission last time was, just circulation, simple enough, from Waukegan Road, the two entrances, from Everett Road, the entrances. We've widened the curbs. There's a midpoint entrance coming in off of Waukegan Road with a right in, right out. That median was shortened so that we could make sure that we get the fire truck in safely and through the property. The south part of the property was just fine. So it's those midpoints that you're looking at. That long rectangular box on the north side of the residential building, that's the loading area. We've lengthened the loading area. That was one other concern about where do we have areas for pickup, drop off. There's a door on the north side of the residential building as well as on the east side for deliveries or short-term pickup and drop off for residents of the apartment building. Finally, on the north side of the existing Everett Road building, we removed one of the 3 parking spaces that was facing west. There was a concern from the city engineer's comment that would be a difficult turning movement. We eliminated that 3rd parking space that's facing toward the coffee shop, but on the north side of the residential. This is page 13, if you're paging through and looking for what we're doing here. And then finally, one of the commissioners had asked about handicap parking. We did add an additional handicap parking. So now there's 2 handicap parkings in front of the medical office on the south side. There's 2 on the residential, and there's 1 up on the coffee shop side. So there's 5 total ADA parking spaces. And finally, the long rectangular box up next to the Everett Road entrance, there was a comment about that's a 2-lane access point that's coming in to the property. We can keep it 2 lanes, but the comment was a concern about access. Can we make it into a 3-lane entrance so we have a dedicated left turn, a waiting lane to make a right turn, and then the inbound is not obstructed? We can do that, but there's an existing honey locust tree at that location. We'd love to say that this is a land bank reserve for the 3rd lane. If we cut down the honey locust tree, we can do 3 lanes. But right now, we're still showing it as a 2-lane entrance, and it's something we can address as the development starts to progress. So those were the primary changes. One of the questions had to do with being able to have interconnected, let's see, open space. Oh, I'm going backwards. My mistake. Umpteen plans before this one. One of the things that we also added that I didn't mention before was a gathering space. This is the northwest corner of the residential building, and this is a seating area, a place for casual gathering, a place that you could say, I'm walking up the sidewalk on Everett and I need to get away from traffic, so it would have landscape benches and some plantings. Carrie from Mariani is here with us this evening. She could explain later on a little bit more about the landscape plantings, but this was an addition that was asked for that we have included as one of the many public gathering areas. And then finally, I'm going the wrong way again. Page 23, I'm looking for. There. This is showing green space around the perimeter. You know, one of the things you need to kind of look at and think about with this site plan is where are the buildings? The buildings are actually facing the right-of-way. This is a site planning question, but the buildings are presenting themselves to the streetscape, and what you're not seeing excuse me, is what you see when you go further north into Settlers Square with a large sea of parking. The parking's actually tucked behind. It's landscaped on the south side against the residential. On the east side, it's landscaped. So those are not just buffers, but they're heavily landscaped for the residential. But the parking lot works. It's tucked in. It's not your first impression of downtown Settlers Square. And then it's connected so that the red dots are showing how I could traverse as a pedestrian accessible route to go to the residential, to go to the coffee shop, to go to the medical, or to walk up to Sunset or the train station. So those are some of the elements that we've brought into the both private and public open space areas that show the connectivity and the increase over 27% average, where it's only required to have 15% open space. This is 27% with all the green that you're seeing with sidewalks and green space. Jack has already shown the building shape. I want to keep to our time frame and introduce Lue Abuna from KLOA to talk about traffic and circulation, and I'll get you back to the site plan. This is it.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lue Abuna, A-B-O-O-N-A. I'm a principal with KLOA. I'll touch very briefly on a couple issues. I think Nick did a good job explaining the changes that were made to the on-site circulation. We worked together on developing this modified plan to make sure that the on-site circulation can accommodate all type of vehicles. We did an extensive study of auto turns to look at the passenger vehicle circulation, the truck deliveries, as well as emergency vehicles. And now with the changes that have been presented with the some of the curb modifications, the elimination of coupled parking spaces, the site now can accommodate all these maneuvers in and out, both of Everett and Waukegan Road. From a site plan perspective, this property being a mixed use provides a very unified plan in terms of circulation. The elimination of 4 existing curb cuts that currently exist today, down from 7 to 3, will provide for efficient flow of traffic in and out of the site, will minimize the impact and conflicts with the external traffic. It will allow for the share of drive aisles between the different uses. From the parking perspective, we did a very comprehensive look at the parking demand of this proposed development. We looked at it not only from the demand for each use separately, but we looked at it from the perspective of sharing of parking. You have 2 uses here that have complementary to each other. A medical office building that has demand during the day on weekdays, and then residential use that peaks on weekday nights and weekends. So that gives the ability of the existing parking to be shared between the 2 uses. So for that reason, you can see based on our analysis, if you apply the shared parking concept, the peak demand will be about 74, 75 spaces versus the 100 spaces that are being provided. So we believe that what's being provided here is very efficient, and that's not even including the 20 spaces that are off-site that are also available for the employees of the office building. With that, I conclude my presentation and turn it back over to Jack.
One of the most significant comments at our last meeting was the building height. And I'd like to ask Joe if you have we have a couple of moments here. Joe, if you could talk a bit about the configuration of the roof line and how it really fits with the neighborhood. Thanks, Joe. Here, I can get you to this. The plan that I was working on.
Just to be brief, Joe Antunovich, CEO of Antunovich Associates Architects in Chicago. We prepared this exhibit which compares what was approved before for the medical office building on the site, shown in red, overlaid on the gray building, the residential building that we have proposed to you. One of the things people are saying, oh, you're proposing a 4-story building here. And, but really the roof height, the actual roof height of our building and the medical office building that was approved some years ago are almost the same heights, except that an office building requires higher floor-to-floors. They have 3 stories, approximately 40 feet in height. Our roof, which is shown there in the red line on the upper drawing, is approximately 44 feet, a few feet taller. But we have a mansard roof that encloses our mechanical and it helps lower the mass of the building when you see it from afar. So the mansard is simply an enclosure around our mechanical equipment. The previous scheme had an enclosure around a mechanical element right in the middle of the building. So actually the roof heights, the basic roof heights of the buildings, the lower roof heights, are essentially the same or very similar to each other. So I just wanted to make that clarification as we talk about 3 and 4 stories, but we have completely different uses. And so we would put to you, even when we look at our building, I just wanted to show this view. When you look at this building, you don't really even see the mansards that we have as you would walk by the building. The edge of the roof that you see here is comparable to the edge of the roof height of the previous medical office building that we had approved several years ago.
Thanks, Joe. Just 1 or 2 other comments. Traffic is an important element in any plan and its impact on the neighborhood. The comparison that KLOA had done comparing the medical office building to the 32-unit apartment building is the apartment building would generate about 860 fewer vehicle trips per day. So I know in some of the correspondence that Kathy had received when the people dealt with, commented on a 4-story building and the traffic that would generate, the traffic is significantly less with the 32-unit apartment building than a medical office building. So I want to make sure that that is recognized as part of the analysis. There was in the recommendation to deny approval, there was a comment that the site is circuitous, and what we're doing is putting 3 individual parcels together so they can actually work together, as opposed to having the BP station and then an improvement on what was Pasquesi Home and Garden and 1025. So by creating a campus, as Louie mentioned, we went from 7 curb cuts to 3 curb cuts and organized the circulation on the site. So it makes the intersection flow much better. So, given the site constraints and given the history of this property, we think merging these properties together by cross easements for ingress, egress, as well as parking is really important. There was also a criticism that it needed to be more aesthetically pleasing, and we object to that word, that phrase. We have a world-class architect, Joe Antunovich, for this building, and for the overall site plan, we've got a world-class landscape architect, and that is Mariani Landscape. So we like this site. We like our plan. We think that the fundamentals of the plan work really well, and we hope that you'll give it consideration so we could move on this evening. Perfect timing. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Freeland.
Thanks for the grace period.
Comments by city staff?
Thank you, Chairman Dixon, members of the commission. I don't think there's anybody in this room, or certainly no one that has spoken to the commission or contacted staff that doesn't want to see this site developed. I think Each time we see a plan for this site, it becomes clearer and clearer that this is a challenging site. We know that IDOT will require that the accesses that previously existed, now some 15 years ago, would not be permitted. So the access is limited, the site is narrow, it's constrained in part because there's already an office building in the northeast corner. And despite the desire to see this developed, it's really important that this is a site that's developed in a way that is really going to be successful and not problematic for the long term. This site plan as proposed is very tight. You've heard a lot of responses, but I will just hit on a few of those. The parking on the site, in staff's opinion, is not adequate to meet the needs. To think that there's going to be some on-site sharing between the office use and the residences. We know that more people work at home now. We know that acute care is in fact open on the weekends. So the thought that we have two uses that demand parking at completely different times really is questionable. It would be a challenge managing that operationally. Would the residents who move into the residential building be limited in the number of cars they could have on site? If so, how would that be monitored? There is an agreement to allow employees of the office site to park across the street on the north side of Everett Road. You do have some language in the staff report from the code that speaks to the fact that there needs to be assurance that that opportunity is going to be viable for the long term. We certainly know that on the north side of Everett Road there are long-term established uses, but there's never any guarantee that uses are going to remain. The parking spaces themselves do not meet the city's engineering standards. They are 16 feet in depth instead of 18 feet, which can result in the travel lanes being narrow. And I think we've all been in commercial developments where the parking lots are tight. They are hard to maneuver, hard to back out. Again, assuring that this is developed in a high-quality way is very important. The coffee shop has been increased since the last plan from a single-lane drive-through to a double-lane drive-through, which has created some tightness. When the staff speaks to the circuitous circulation on the site, if you are on Everett Road and want to go to Starbucks, you are in fact driving along the east side of that office building. And I think that is in part the increasing volume of traffic that will be using that travel lane is a concern from the city engineer's standpoint. The driveway entrance from that east side onto Everett Road is being widened. Near Everett Road, it's being widened to virtually the property line that it shares with residential. Normally, we would look for some kind of a landscape buffer in cases where we have residential immediately abutting a commercial use. The density proposed on this site is considerably higher than any density in the area. Again, those numbers are in your staff report, but it is more than double the density that we see in the area. There are no full 4-story buildings and no 4-story residential buildings. So this would be a significant departure from the character of the overall area. There's a lot of information in your staff report. You've heard a long report. I won't go on. Just a couple points. This is a new petition. I know we keep referring to the previously approved petition. I would note that that was not approved unanimously, and that was not approved without criticism. Again, I think that we continue to learn each time we see a proposal for this site. I would note that even when the Pasquesi Home and Garden store was on this site along with the gas station, traffic circulation was difficult, and that on a Saturday morning in the spring, that site was difficult. And I think moving forward, we need to make sure that this site works, again, given the challenges of this specific site. Staff does not believe this is ready for approval. You do have Certainly, you always have the option, if you think additional information is needed, you have the opportunity to continue this. I know that the petitioner is looking for a vote from the Plan Commission. You do have a recommendation in the staff report for denial based on the findings in the staff report. Certainly, as the commission deliberates, any findings to support whichever decision you make, articulating those would be helpful, and we will incorporate that into any recommendation that goes forward to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commission members to the petitioner or staff, just for points of clarification at this juncture?
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, questions, but we're not going to go into the comment period right now, so we'll wait. I mean, do you have any questions either
For staff or the petitioner?
Yeah.
for staff or the petitioner? Yeah. Do you want to go ahead? Sure. Commissioner Davey, go ahead, please.
So just think, I'll start with, so on the issue of IDOT, I understand that that's a kind of could be a long coming process, but have you continued to, are you in contact with IDOT? Have you discussed anything with IDOT in terms of where they are on their plans for Everett Road and that expansion?
We have, yes. We've met actually with Kathy and with the IDOT representatives. And Mr. Iosu has commented that he is very willing to cooperate if you, let me see if I can get that pointer here. Right there, that piece, we created, the plan is to create 4 parcels out of this.
Right.
And the northernmost, the piece just north of the Starbucks, is dedicated to the city for the expansion.
But there's
So-
no, just in September 13th, there's no changes.
Oh,
or
no,
anything with it.
no, there's no change.
Okay,
in
got that.
Yeah, our position is the same. We will cooperate. We think the improvement for Everett Road is terrific.
Okay, I mean, and you addressed some of this, but just in reading the GHA report, engineering report to the city, I'm just kind of curious as to your take on some of the points they make here. I mean, they're pretty direct in their perspective on why they think this, some of these things are tight. I mean, and you addressed some of it, but do you mind just kind of taking me
Yeah,
through that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I showed you the photograph of the east line. So, somebody is reading a manual that says it should be 24 feet. And if we had the opportunity to make it 24 feet, we would. We can't. We have a building on the west side of that lane where we can expand the lane 2 feet. So we'll do that. We can't go east because of the property line and a significant drop in grade, and there's a stormwater infrastructure there. So going east isn't possible. So we're very comfortable with that, and our traffic engineer, KLOA, is comfortable with that as a two-way. With regard to their comment on the standard parking dimension, and Kathy mentioned this as well, and that's one of the points that I raised when I said that there's some clarification that's needed. The way that the report is written is accurate in that we don't comply with the standard parking dimension, but we do comply with the code, because the code allows for a slightly shorter parking space if it abuts landscaping. So, so reading it, you would say, well, you don't comply with the code, but we actually do comply with the code. So, those sort of comments from the engineer, they're technically accurate, but we don't think operationally they impact the use of the property.
Right, but it seems like, I mean, and I'm not trying to challenge, but I'm just trying to work through this myself in terms of, in isolation, I can certainly develop arguments, but I mean, when you look at the compound, there's a series of factors that seem to be compounding here, right? So we're also dealing with this issue of a limited number of parking spaces, and I understand what Kathy said about, there being a potential agreement with the neighbors, and obviously there may be some challenges associated
Can
with
I respond to
Yeah.
that? The Iosu family has had a 10-year relationship with St. Mary's to park on the southwest corner of their lot, the school's lot. We pay them rent. They never use those spaces. Well, the leases that we have at 1025 Everett require that the staff of the offices at 1025 are required to park off-site, and we provide that parking space, those parking spaces for them. in the write-up, the staff report indicated that they had been checking on the parking utilization over the last few weeks, which I'm glad they spent their time doing that, but we could have told them. We've told the tenants, we've basically given them a hall pass to park on the south lot that was the Pasquesi lot, because we can open that up. It's convenient for them, so we're happy to do that. Although prior to us opening the Pasquesi lot to the 1025 tenants, the staff parked on St. Mary's property. We also have an arrangement with St. Pat's to rent 12 parking spaces, so we would have 32 parking spaces available to us. Now, Kathy's comment is valid, and that is, you don't know, forever is a long time, right? So we have a written agreement that covers this, but it could be terminated by the church if the church felt the reason to. But fortunately, there's about 500 parking spaces kitty corner. They're a 3-minute walk from the site at Metro. And so we can lease those spaces as well. We don't expect that the staff of Starbucks will park off-site, and we don't expect that the residents or visitors will park off-site. We have sufficient parking for their peak demands. So we're good with that. We think that there's more than enough parking in the immediate area.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Pasquesi?
No questions for me.
Commissioner Moore?
Couple questions. For the southwest corner of the apartment building, you're requesting, as part of the package, of variance, because you're in the setback by 5 feet or so.
Yes.
What is the hardship for that variance?
It's really, well, this is a good image here. To point to the spot that you mentioned, it's right there, which coincidentally and not surprisingly, we needed the same variance for the medical office building, and we're granted that. Although the medical office building required about 2 feet less, maybe about 3.5 feet or so. If you look at the drive aisle to the east of the apartment building, if we move this building 5 feet, we have a much tighter drive aisle, and it would make the maneuver in and out of the parking spaces more difficult. So basically, we would lose parking. And so we've arranged the site so we can maximize the parking, more than comply with the green space requirements and open space requirements, but we actually need that variance to in the front yard.
But couldn't you just reduce the size of the building to accommodate the setback?
Well, sure, yeah. We couldn't build the building then, but we need a certain size unit to accommodate what we believe our customers would be. If the building was reduced by square footage, the units then become smaller and I think less gracious and less desirable for the community.
But you could make fewer units within the building.
Yeah, you could build a single-family house there.
I guess I'm not sure what the hardship would be then if you could move the building back or shrink the square footage of the building to accommodate the setback.
I don't think that it would be a practical design that it would really operate properly as a building. Just the same way, it's a fair question, but if we went for the medical office building, we needed that so we could have appropriate bay sizes and appropriate parking, and so we needed that. And that, I would ask you, what is the hardship to the community to have that 4 feet over the line?
That's not the issue, though. Okay, move on to the second part of the variance. I was looking at this and the development, and I'm not sure how this request for the variance, how this is not created by the owner. The owners assembled the 3 parcels, and one of them includes improved property, and you're trying to configure the design.
Right.
Seems like the property owner or prior property owners through prior development have created the hardship or created the request for a variance.
Well, I think the utilization of the site and to make it feasible has created the need for the variance. Yeah, that's an accurate description. The site is a challenging site to work with. Real estate in Lake Forest and most of the northern suburbs is very expensive. So we need to develop a plan that we believe is feasible. Real estate, like anybody's business, is challenging, and there's no assurance that it will be successful. but you have to try to plan for it to be successful, and this allows us that opportunity.
Okay, thank you for that. On the building height, just to distinguish, not that the medical office building design is relevant in this particular hearing, but in the medical office building, the roof was, I believe it was 39 feet 10 inches to the top of the parapet. And yours is higher. And to distinguish the two, the medical office building had a mechanical enclosure that made it higher, and that is allowed or recognized at least under the zoning code. Height limits can be somewhat flexible for church spires, chimneys, cooling towers, elevator bulkheads, AC systems, et cetera. What you're proposing is just a higher roof, right?
Well, the roof is, as Joe Antunovich mentioned, the roof is about 2 feet difference, the actual roof height. You see the gables on this, pardon me, right there. So the gable on that is about the same height as that roof element that runs in the MOB, the full east-west dimension.
Right.
So you can see it there. Like at the bottom image, Commissioner, if you look at that, you can see how the massing of these two buildings is almost identical. The roof height of the proposed apartment building is almost identical to the roof height of the previous medical office building.
Right, but you'll concede that the zoning code allows flexibility in relation to mechanical enclosures,
sure, yeah,
whereas it does
sure.
not allow flexibility in relation
No,
to your
yeah,
roof design.
well, we're asking for a variance. As Kathy mentioned, because the medical office building was approved and it wasn't without some criticism, we need a variance
Right.
to make this project viable.
Kathy, the variance for the height is handled by the Building Review Board, correct?
The height limitation in the commercial districts is in the zoning code, so it would be appropriate to incorporate it into the special use permit. You are correct, Commissioner Moorhead, that the Building Review Board is able to grant zoning variances for residences, but in the B districts, the 35-foot height limitation is specifically called out.
Okay.
So, just so I understand, Kathy, when we had the 49 feet approved for the medical office building, was that via a special use or was that a variance? And is there a distinction between?
A special use permit can incorporate and grant variances. So it is a variance, but it can be incorporated into a special use permit. They're
Okay,
called
but-
out as variances
But so
within that
to
permit.
have a 49-foot height approved, does that require a special use or is it just a variance to permit a 49-foot?
It is a variance that can be acknowledged through a special use permit. It is a variance, yes, and the variance criteria would apply.
Okay.
So in that case, what is the hardship for the roof again, for the request for the variance on the roof?
Well, first, we need these 32 units to make the project viable. We need
So let me hone in on that, to make it financially viable?
Yes, yeah,
So
to-
it will not work under any circumstances if you don't
Commissioner Moorhead.
design it like that?
Bottom, yeah, I mean, it is, let's not, I mean, the economics for the developer are one thing, I think, but
Well,
Well, I
so-
raised that. I mean, you're looking for what the hardship is. This
Yeah.
is our motivation in making this 4 stories is to have enough apartments so the project can go forward. So it will be worth investing millions of dollars. We have a property owner, granted, the economics isn't something that is in your charter, but a property owner who's invested millions of dollars in the property, a national coffee shop has approved the plan and actually required us to make modifications in the plan, and they're prepared to enter into a lease for the space. And we have a multifamily developer, Greg Van Sock, who is prepared to invest additional millions of dollars, and they're prepared to do that for the opportunity to be successful. And we can't be successful if we were 35 feet.
I appreciate that, but the applicable case law says that financial viability is not a hardship condition. You would have to take the property and zero it out to $0, that you can't develop at all. And I just want to clarify, that's what you're saying, you cannot develop the property at all, or you just can't develop it the way you want to develop it?
I would say the latter. We can't develop it the way we want to develop it, which we think is a real asset to the community.
Okay.
Yeah, Nick, pardon me.
If you'll allow, from the perspective of saying we could comply if we had a mechanical cupola or enclosure that would represent something similar to the medical office building pop-up that you have there. We could have a flat roof that would be probably out of context with Settlers Square, so that the actual roof, the ceiling level of the occupied space is at that gutter line, so to speak, where the red line is going through. And really what you're looking at is that that's a mechanical well underneath and within the flat roof that's hidden. And so you're seeing the gables and the pitch of the roof acting more or less as a mechanical shield to hide mechanical, and it does fit in with the character and the appearance of Settlers Square. So could we do a flat roof building, and would it be just a mechanical cupola? It wouldn't look as good. So I think that you've got architecture going here, articulated architecture with, looking at a flat facade, it looks like a pancake up there on the wall. The thing is, it's got bays, it's got recesses, it has motion to it. So I think take that into consideration as to why we've done what we've done, so it fits in with Settlers Square, not just kind of saying this is a flat screen out of context image. So that there is some rationale, a strong rationale, as to how this fits into the business district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask some questions about the KLOA report? And maybe
Yes, yeah, Louis, please.
Just to jump around in the report a little bit, part of your analysis used the IDOT traffic records from July of 2021. And my question is, 2021, we were still in COVID. Are those, is 2021 an unusual year, an outlier? And should we be looking at other years with more realistic traffic conditions?
Yeah, if you're referring to the IDOT data for daily traffic, that's the the most recent information that they have published. We have in the past tried to use pre-COVID numbers, and they have specifically asked us to use the most up-to-date data. This is just kind of a reference of what the daily traffic is on the roadway system. Our analysis is more based on what we did is by going out there and doing actual count data to reflect the traffic conditions at the intersection. So this is merely just citing what the road is carrying. And it's probably, if we go back to previous studies we've done for the site where the data was 2019 or 2018, it's likely was higher. But again, it's more of just a reference point, and it's not necessarily something that we use in the analysis.
Okay. And then you did your, I don't know what you call them, traffic counts, where you sit and watch. You did them in July, and you did one on a Saturday. My question is, there's a school right across the street and a church, and church is on Sunday, not Saturday, and school is out of session in July. Would the traffic count be different had you done it during the school year or on a Sunday instead of a Saturday?
Well, typically, I'll go with the Sunday first. I mean, typically we don't do an analysis on a Sunday because traffic in the area, even with the church, will be a lot lower. So, for IDOT's purposes, when they review these type of studies, they would like us to look on a weekday condition and a Saturday if there's any retail component to the development. As far as your question regarding doing counts in July when the school is not in session, there is perhaps a slight increase in the morning because that's when the rush hour and the school traffic coincide. But the evening peak, which is usually after 4 or 5 o'clock, that's after the school is out anyway. So it should not affect what the analysis is showing for the weekday evening, which is typically more critical because there's more traffic on the roadway system and there's more traffic generated by the development during that peak hour.
Okay. And then when you were talking about the train, you referred to it as the Union Pacific North, which is the train here and on this side of Lake Forest, but that one's the Milwaukee District North. I was just wondering, I'm assuming it's a Scrivener error,
Yeah,
but
probably.
would that change your analysis at all?
No, it's the observations is what we observed of the railroad tracks by
Okay.
the intersection. So yeah, if the reference is wrong, but the observations, the collocation is correct.
Okay, and then during your observation of the train, as I read it, I think you were observing the train, there were no Amtrak trains going through, and I think you saw one freight, and
Yes.
that was it?
Yes, during the peak hours.
Okay,
And you know, freight trains are irregular, so you know, maybe another day if we go out there, there's probably
Right.
be none or maybe more than one. So it's you know, you don't know their schedule for security reasons. So
right,
it's unlike the you know, Metro. It's more you know, on schedule.
okay. And then, last question on the traffic, I read the report, tell me if I read this incorrectly, the car count for the Starbucks is 96 cars, or more or less. That's not my question. My question is, what is the average customer wait time for a Starbucks? I Googled it, Bloomberg QSR survey said it was 4 minutes and 44 seconds. Does that sound about right?
I mean, again, it depends on the order and how fast they can process it. I think they're getting a lot faster now because of the mobile orders. People, you know, ordering in advance, so that kind of moves the line quicker for the drive-through. But you know, in all cases, what we try to do is provide as much stacking as possible. To ensure that, you know, that the times when the wait is longer than the average, that there is no spillage on the drive aisles and particularly on the external roadway system, because that's when you create, you know, unsafe conditions. So, you know, as far as, you know, actual wait times and whatnot, I mean, we don't have actual data. Starbucks obviously keeps track of that more than we would. We've done observations of drive-through Starbucks to understand, you know, what the queues are, what the average queues are, what the maximum queues are, and what is being designed here, we believe will adequately accommodate their demands.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then one last question for, well, for whoever, maybe Mr. Frigo can take this. On the, for the parking on the site generally, the city is recommending a parking space of 18 feet or whatever, and you're saying, I think I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that you can use 2 feet of the landscape buffer to accommodate your, a vehicle? Is that right?
The overhang, yes. But let's have Kathy confirm that.
Certainly, we have many parking lots where an overhang into the landscaped areas is permitted. Again, in this case, we're looking at an overall tight site. We're looking at adjacency to a residential neighborhood, so that landscape buffer and what can be planted in there and the height and the density is important. And I think on this site too, we're looking at all of these various different pieces, different variances, and it needs to be considered as a whole. So although the engineering standards aren't met, the code does allow that variance in areas where the city finds it to be acceptable.
Okay, so you're using, that landscape buffer space is being counted for landscape buffering, parking, because you're taking the
The
area.
overhang, yeah.
Overhang, and then are you counting that towards your green space as well, in the green
Yeah,
space
the green-
calculation?
Yes, yeah. And we,
Okay.
you've probably seen it in the tables, but we exceed the green space requirement substantially. I mean, even if we deleted that, we would exceed the green space.
Right, okay, I just want to make sure that I understand how that's being used.
Yeah, the calculation includes all of the green space, to answer
Mhm.
your question.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Moorhead. At this time, I don't have any questions. My questions
Chairman,
were, yes.
If we could. Greg had a question that he wanted to ask on a comment that Kathy had, just for clarification.
Sure,
Is that acceptable?
sure.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, Greg Van Skok, and I would be the developer of the site. And I'll just take a minute here. But one thing that's been a little puzzling to me is, I mean, Kathy mentioned that the staff report says the density's too high. Well, the baseline right now is a 30,000-foot medical office building. That would have over 100 employees and hundreds of patients a day coming in and out of there. And according to the traffic study, it's one of the highest density uses you can have. The lowest density use you can have in real estate is an apartment building or a condo building. We would need 48 parking spaces. I've done 3,000 units, developed 3,000 units. We have a very comprehensive database of parking needs for apartment people. And we think we'd need 1.2 spaces per unit, but we go to 1.5 and we would need 48 spaces out of the 100. So this is a very, very low density use, the lowest you can find. I just think that is really important because I think if we wanted to, we could go build this medical office building. But I think it would be a travesty to Lake Forest to have that density on the site compared to the low density of a residential building. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, is there any public testimony? Please come to the podium. I know there was a couple of folks that requested to speak. Please take your time. And as you're getting to the podium there, if I could ask you, please, once you get to the podium there by the microphone, take your time. If you could just simply state your name for the record and welcome. Thank you. And maybe adjust the microphone. Mr. Frigo, could I ask you kindly, there we go.
It's okay.
Yeah, that looks good.
I'm Beth Tyke, and I live at 1077 Franz Drive, part of the Chateau development. I'm going to give you a little history. I have lived in West Lake Forest for over 50 years and have attended numerous commission meetings. When I moved to Lake Forest over 50 years ago, there was little development. The Lasker property had been subdivided, and there were a few small homes on Everett Road. There was a country feel, and zoning was 10 acres, 5 acres, and 3-acre lots. As the years passed, the polo fields disappeared, as well as the cornfields. And the zoning was changed to 1.5 acres, 1 acre, 1/2 acre, 1/4 acre, and even a small area of 1/8 acre lots. Planned multiple home developments appeared, but the area retained a country-like ambiance due to the generous donations of property to open lands and the purchase of large tracts of land by the Lake County Forest Preserve. The incorporation of retaining ponds also helped retain an open feeling as well as controlling runoff. Sidewalks in West Lake Forest are few and far between. Single-family home setbacks add to the sense of openness. Though the cornfields are gone, the many curving streets, soft lighting, and low building heights help retain a sense of country, a sense of openness. A 4-story, 32 apartment building on 1.2 acres of land is not keeping with the character of this community as I have known it. The concept of open space is important to West Lake Forest, and this development provides minimal open space. Rather, it is simply 2.3 acres with over 38,598 square feet of building development, a far cry from the rural, country-like feel of West Lake Forest. I cannot help but feel it will have a negative impact on the community as whole and only encourage other large-scale developments, not in keeping with the present country-like built environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any other members?
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. I would like to just make a comment
Can you
as...
please state your name?
Oh, I'm so sorry. My name is Sandy Carson. My address is 1180 Lynette. I live in Colony Square, which is just off of Waukegan Road. So I would like to make a comment based on the fact that we have all acknowledged that this corner is very challenging for development. But it has been 15 years, and you did approve the same height of a medical building. And quite honestly, the empty lot, the disarray, it looks horrible. And you don't seem to be as concerned about what that looks like as whether or not you're approving a building that is the same height as a building that you did already approve. As far as the tightness of the property, I do think some consideration needs to be given to working harder with this group, which is certainly seemingly willing to accommodate anything that they can do to make this work. And I do think you need to give, I mean, you may be running out of people. You've already had a service station. You've already had a drugstore. You've already had a car wash. You've already had a medical office building. And, you know, you have the opportunity to have a Starbucks, which is a pretty great thing to be able to say that you have in your neighborhood. Certainly better than an empty lot with weeds growing in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening? Please. Good
Hi, I am Jill Kaz. I live at 1045 Marlane in Lake Forest Chateau. And my concern is and will continue to be the traffic, the congestion, and the safety. So I want us all to think, mostly focus on east of Waukegan on Everett. So I walk my dog almost every day, and I go to that Starbucks, which is pretty much in our neighborhood. I go to that Starbucks all the time. So I walk past the driveway of the medical building, and I watch cars come out of there. Not a whole lot right now, but I do watch them come out, and I watch them try to make a left turn. And when they can't, what happens? Water seeks its level. They turn right, they cut through Marlane to Franz to Waukegan. And I think the water seeks its level is going to be an ongoing issue for at least the people in Lake Forest Chateau. Like Beth said, we don't have sidewalks. We have a narrow street where lots of people, many older people, are walking their dogs, and you know, we already get cut through traffic. That's not going to be, I mean, we already experienced cut through traffic to Waukegan. This is just going to exacerbate it. So I really wanted people to think about what that corner is already like, and especially, maybe not in July, but when St. Mary's lets out, that line of cars goes way, way east on Everett. And if there's a train, forget it. It's just going to sit there. So people, all these people who are living in these 32 apartments are going to want to get on Everett, turn left to get to Waukegan. There's no way. Or they're going to go out the Waukegan way, try to make a left there. Well, how are they going to make a left at Waukegan? They're going to turn right, and they're going to cut right through. So that is the point I wanted to make this evening. I hope you'll consider it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please, come forward. Thank you.
My My name is Ronald Marisi. I have a residence right up against the medical building over there. And the lot line between that street and my building is very narrow. And to take more land away, to move over to make his driveway wider, it's gonna like having him in my lap in my back door. It's very not appropriate. We have evergreens there now, and we have to play with them to keep enough coverage so that my tenant can't get covered up with the dust from the driveway. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll have a moment here at the end. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else here this evening that, from the public that would like to speak? Anyone else? Are there any other final questions from commissioners here? Now I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Frigo, if you would have any comments that you'd like for an opportunity for rebuttal.
Well, I would like to just clarify this gentleman's concern. If I understood your remarks, you live east of the driveway that is east. Yeah, right. So the 2 feet that we're talking about expanding is to the west of the existing driveway, closer to the medical office building, not to the east, not closer to you. The retaining wall that is at the east side of the driveway will stay, it'll stay exactly the same. It won't be moved at all. The driveway will be widened to the west, closer to the former Kendler building. Okay.
Thank you.
And as far as the rebuttal, I think we have made a case that we comply with almost all of the comprehensive plan points and most of the zoning points. And yes, there are variances requested. We think that it's appropriate to invest in this property further and make this really terrific architectural statement for the west side of Lake Forest. We think it would be good for the community over the long term. So we would like you to vote this evening if you would. And if you have any other questions, our team is here to respond.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any additional staff comments, responses to either petitioner or any of the public comments?
Just a couple comments. Clarification on the density. The staff report specifically is speaking to residential densities in the surrounding area. The density proposed on this site is approximately 24 units per acre. The density in Lake Forest Chateau development directly to the east is 4.5 units per acre. The density in the villas immediately to the south is 12.3 acres. Colony Square, which is a bit further south, is 5.8 units per acre, and Wood Creek Courts east behind Sunset Foods is 1.89 units per acre. We don't know what type of traffic the medical office building would have generated. Certainly, as was mentioned, you can look at standards. What we know is at times the acute care facility in the existing 1025 Everett Road Medical Office building has had peaks and certainly has been very busy. So we don't know exactly what this site would have been, and perhaps the medical office building would have been problematic as well. But again, the combination of factors here, the fact that the east driveway, although it's only being expanded toward the residential property at the driveway entrance to Everett Road, it is being expanded toward the building in an area where we would usually expect some landscape buffer. As was noted, the greenscape, although it technically meets the code, the language in the code does speak to continuous green space. And as you look at this site, there are a lot of areas, square footage of green space that is long and rectangular. Certainly the landscaping will be impacted by needing to accommodate some cars, or the cars will end up narrowing the travel lanes. The building height, again, this is a full 4-story residential building, and there is not another building that even approximates, another residential building that even approximates this height. We do have a number of commercial buildings with tower elements that rise to the proposed height, but those are ornamental, decorative, and not a solid mass. So it is the various components of this plan together, not individually, even though individual requirements are met. The intent of the comprehensive plan is really to create a development that is compatible with the overall area, and more importantly, will not be problematic going forward. Based on the plan as we see it today, certainly there are opportunities to refine it, but the plan as we see it today, we believe will not function well for the long term and will be problematic. Thank you.
Thank you. The testimony and comment period on this matter will now be closed. At this point in the process, we have discussion and comments just with the commissioner members ourselves. I'll start with Commissioner Davey.
Yeah, just would quickly,
go
you closed, but if I want to ask a question.
You can ask a
Mr.
question.
Frigo, I can still do that.
You can ask a
Okay,
question.
great. Yeah, I guess, look, obviously, I think we all support, a mixed-use development on the site. I mean, this medical office building was previously approved. The economics, it sounds like from what you previously have told us, changed. So you changed the project. And given what the staff report says, I mean, at this point, are you just opposed to trying to go back and spend a little more time with the city on, their core issues, which seem to be this kind of the circulation on the property and some safety concerns, and because you obviously have addressed some of these issues, some of the other issues, which I appreciate, but just wondering, if you're willing to go back and spend a little more time to get to.
We have, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
We've worked this site in every which way. We've really worked with our traffic consultant, Louis Abuna, and their auto turn to try to make the circulation work as well as possible. We think the alternative of this is you have 3 individual properties that aren't connected to one another, and that doesn't help the intersection, and it doesn't help traffic circulation or safety in the neighborhood. But by combining them and having cross easements, we think that it does. And, is it perfect? No. We would like more space. That'd be great. But we don't have it. We have the site that we have. And so we're trying to do the best plan. We think that the plan actually works. So to answer your question, would we go back to this, try to accommodate staff comments? The comments are basically make wider drive aisles, fewer parking spaces, but that doesn't really address the need of the on-site uses. So I would say we have confidence in this plan. We have confidence commercially, and we have confidence in the professionals that designed this plan. So I would not entertain going back and playing with the parking structure again.
So no is your answer?
It's a long answer, but no. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Pasquesi, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start by saying I'd like nothing more than to approve a project on this site. I am tired of seeing this vacant lot for now 15 years. But there are a number of issues with this plan. And I think what Commissioner Davey said was a valid point, in that individually we can look at the building height, the circulation, the individual items, and kind of find a workaround for each one when looking at them individually in a vacuum. But I think there's a compounding effect, and you have to look at it in its totality. I would be in favor with, I think what we want here. I like the concept of the multi-use, the 3 buildings. There's just no way that I can see approving it in its current presentation. And for me, of all the issues, I can't get over, my biggest concern is the on-site circulation, the overall traffic and congestion around this site. I live in this neighborhood. I drive around it all the time. I just don't see how this doesn't create a significant issue with traffic, not only within the site, but just on Everett and Waukegan. So if I would propose continuing it and trying to work something out, but if the petitioner is asking for a vote tonight, my vote would be no.
Thank you. Commissioner Moorhead.
I agree with the prior sentiments, and I'm not inclined to support it. And since it sounds like petitioner wants a vote and may approach the city council about this, maybe I'll go through some detailed comments, if you can indulge me for a minute. On the variances for the southwest corner of the building and the height, it doesn't appear that the hardship standards are met, and it does not appear that these 2 requests are not related to something caused by the owner or the prior owner. Through the assemblage of the property and the improved property, this situation was created by the current property owner. The zoning hasn't changed, setbacks haven't changed. And on the hardship, I appreciate the desire to build a project and have a certain return on investment. However, under applicable law, not being able to achieve the desired financial return does not qualify as a hardship. It would have to be, you'd have to show that you couldn't develop the property at all. And simply by having the Starbucks development on this same property, we are showing that something can be developed. So that disproves that statement. So I don't see the variance requests being satisfied. On the comprehensive plan, petitioner said that something to the effect of virtually all of the criteria are satisfied. But I would note section 2.2 does call for first floor retail, which is not in this project. Section 2.4 suggests below grade parking or minimizing surface lots, which is not part of this project. Section 2.5 says the petitioner or the developer should consider impervious surfaces and manage runoff, which is not being helped by having surface parking. For traffic, part of the code requirement 159.109C3 says something, I wrote notes here, it says something to the effect that the project needs to satisfy the city engineer. I mean, there has to be show that there's no material adverse effect on the site or in the area for the traffic, and that hasn't been shown based on the city engineer's letter and the continuing concerns raised in that letter. On the traffic report, it would be super helpful from my perspective to have traffic counts that were taken not during COVID years, and that were not done in July or on a Saturday, considering that this is adjacent to a school and a church, just to get a more accurate count. On the drive-through, there are pedestrian crossings around the drive-through area, which raises a safety issue, which is also an issue under the code. I don't believe pedestrian crossings are supposed to be near the ingress or egress of the drive-through, which they are on the site plan. Based on this being a Starbucks, based on average customer times, it seems like if there's 98 cars and say the average wait time is about 4 minutes, that's 7.5 hours more or less of cars coming through that Starbucks drive-through each day. And if there's pedestrians or families with children, it does raise a legitimate safety issue. Something we talked about earlier in a prior hearing, but we didn't touch on today, was delivery trucks and whether semis, moving trucks could come on the property, and I think that's a issue that they can't. I could be wrong, but I'll just note that. But the other thing we haven't talked about are garbage trucks for the 3 buildings as well as Federal Express or overnight courier deliveries or food delivery, which would be helpful to know because this is a very different environment in 2023 than it was pre-COVID, with a lot of the online delivery services. On the parking, a couple things. One, with the off-site parking, the code requires that the agreement not be an agreement, it has to be a deed or a lease. And it has to be recorded in the land records, which it's not currently, and there's been no discussion of that. And the agreement with St. Patrick's, St. Mary's is great. However, I believe that property is owned by the Archdiocese of Chicago and not the church, and the agreement would need to be with the Archdiocese.
It is with the Archdiocese.
Okay, and given the current environment of the church and the potential consolidation of churches, I think the city needs to consider in the long term whether that church is going to be there or not, and how that would function. Because if the parking agreement has to be in effect for the duration of, or for the entire time the buildings are there, it's essentially like a 99-year ground lease or something to that effect. So that, I think more consideration has to be given to that. With respect to the landscape buffer, I'm a little concerned that we've got a landscape buffer which we're counting as part of the parking space. I know we're not technically counting as part of the parking space, but we're using the 2 feet overhang and we're counting it towards green space. It seems like we're triple dipping on square footage, which just adds to the congestion of the entire development. One thing we didn't touch on today is the apartment building, and maybe this is more the purview of the Building Review Board or another body in the city, but I would, if we had more time and maybe it was more relevant, I'd want to pursue the question of what makes this a luxury building. I know there's a delivery zone right next to it. It has one elevator. There was no indication that there's a fitness center, a pool, assigned parking. We didn't get elevations, I don't believe, to show that there would be substantial balconies, an outdoor lounge, grill area, garden, tech cafe, indoor parking, event space, so things like that. All of these things I'm reading are what's advertised on the Kelmscott Park website, which is also advertised as luxury. It seems like there's a disconnect between what we commonly think of as luxury and what's maybe being proposed here. I could be wrong, but it would be very helpful to have more elaboration on that. And then I discussed this in the question and answer, but on the height, I just would distinguish that the medical office building proposal is not relevant for purposes of this meeting. However, for building height, the medical office building was 39 feet 10 inches to the top of the parapet, and the zoning code did allow for some leeway with mechanical enclosures, and this building height is, I believe, 49 feet, and they're distinguishable, so I wouldn't try to draw that comparison in any meaningful way. So those are all my comments. I wanted to put those in the record in case City Council wanted to review them, but that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Moorhead. I just have a few comments, and I'll try not to repeat too many of them. First of all, maybe starting with the neighbors, and I would turn to Kathy. I should have said this earlier, but you know, we should ask the city to look at vehicles being cut through or using the Chateau property there and the residents there cutting through that. So that shouldn't be happening, and that should be addressed, whether this is developed or not. That's my first comment there. My thoughts on the site, just looking at them in general, taking the 3 points that the petitioner put forward at the start of their presentation this evening. The height, I'm not going to dwell on the height. The height has come down. Again, like Commissioner Moorhead, I'm not going to compare it to the medical office building. But for me, the height wasn't as much of an issue as just the parking and the configuration. Unlike Commissioner Moorhead, I'm not too concerned with the parking in this area with the city lot that has, I think, 300 spaces in it or something certainly well over 100 spaces that, for the train station there that aren't being used. I'm not crazy about the idea of off-site parking and the mechanics of that and shuttling people back and forth and the safety of that. But still, the parking configuration on this specific site is awfully tight. Like Commissioner Moorhead, I agree. A moving truck, I don't think, haven't addressed it, but a moving truck, I don't think can come in here. Certainly, that's what the city staff concluded in their report, or much bigger than a box truck is going to have an issue coming onto this site. I would also reiterate what my other two fellow commissioners said in regards to strongly encouraging, the petitioner maybe to continue this, reconsider continuing this, maybe reducing some of the intensity for the development on this site. I would ask the petitioner to work with the city and all the other parties involved in this, and go back to the 2021 proposal, where there was a lot of corroboration between the commission, the city, to come up with a plan for the development of those then 3 buildings, 2 commercial and the coffee shop. Now we're talking about 1 commercial and 1 residential building there. We truly understand the landscape's different, therefore the plan had to change. But I do think that for this particular site, it's not lost what the petitioner is trying to do here, which is, as they said in their first meeting back on September 13th, trying to create a gateway to the city of Lake Forest here on the west end. We heard from some of the neighbors that it is unsightly. It has been unsightly for 15 years since Pasquesi pulled out of there. But with that said, this current proposal is just, I think, too much for this site. The reason I mentioned sort of the past history and compliment the petitioner here for what they're trying to do is to highlight, maybe the strong support that the city has, and I think to show the willingness that I think many of the commissioners here have to really truly have a development for mixed use on this property. We all unquestionably support the development of the site, but and I guess I also want to add, and we've expressed that compromises and flexibilities are going to have to be made for this site. We understand that in order to achieve the goal of development here. However, any plan must be workable and cannot have negative off-site impacts, and has to be done appropriately and correctly. And maybe, one last time, I guess you still want to ask for a vote on this. Is that correct?
So I don't unilaterally respond on behalf of the property owner. Could you give us a pause of 5 minutes so we could have a brief discussion, private discussion?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And take a bathroom break or whatever.
Okay.
Smoke them if you got them.
Maybe we can go through, Kathy, we can, do you want to take we can go through sort of other open agenda items? Sure.
You have a 2024 calendar in front of you. As requested, we have moved the February meeting from Wednesday, Valentine's Day, to Thursday, the day after Valentine's Day. Other than that, all the other months, the meeting is proposed on the regular second Wednesday of the month. If you find that acceptable, you can
I just-
formally approve that. We'll get that posted. Of course, we'll continue to poll, and as happens, we cancel or
Has this
move
been
meetings.
circulated to the commission members that aren't here, or can this be?
It has not. It certainly can be. I would
you-
suggest maybe you go ahead and approve it tonight. We'll circulate it to them. If we need to modify it, we can do that.
Okay. So then, is there a motion to accept the commission schedule for 2024?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anything else from the staff? Maybe we can talk about our possible December meeting, maybe, maybe not,
Why-
right? Depending on what happens here, correct?
Yes.
But anything else on the agenda? Any other items?
The other pending
Possible.
item or item under review, there is a condominium plat. You may recall that for condominium buildings, once a building is built and the dimensions of the individual units is known, we need to bring condominium plat in front of you. A condominium plat for the third McKinley building has been submitted. It is with the city engineer for review. I don't know whether that'll be finalized and ready in December, but I would suggest if that's the only thing we have, that we handle that in January.
Okay.
And I will note that I will note that the caucus has forwarded a recommendation for a member to fill the seat vacated by Steve Douglas. The mayor's reviewing that, and possibly that may come before the council at the December 4th meeting, so you would have, going into the new year, a full commission.
Okay.
That is all I had.
That's all you have?
Yes.
You have a little dance routine or something you can do for
I
us?
have no dance routine.
Yeah. Maybe we'll take a 2-minute recess and let the petitioner finish.
I loved your,
Want to make sure he doesn't fall down the stairs. That's a bad joke, maybe.
Good, Kathy? Also, great. We don't think that we can make the modifications that is being suggested by the Plan Commission or by the staff. We do have a lot of confidence in the plan, and we have confidence that it will work, and it's really a much less intense use that was proposed and approved in 2021. Chairman, you mentioned how cooperative we were working with the staff, and we were. We've built upon that. This is really the same plan, except it is a much less intense use. As Greg mentioned, the lowest intensity use on this site is residential, and as I mentioned, it's 800 and some odd cars fewer per day. So we're certainly disappointed in the comments of the commissioners, but we'll accept whatever your vote is. And we'd like to move on to the city council.
Thank you, Mr. Frigo. I would just simply add, as commissioners here, you know, you come with a professional team that you think very highly of. We as commissioners have a professional team in the city of Lake Forest, city staff and engineers that we rely on and respect a great deal. And this is looking as if it's one of those, we're going to have to agree to disagree, because as commissioners here, we rely on our staff to present to us each and every petition and their recommendations for it. And as you stated at the beginning of your comments here this evening, and as the city stated, it is their recommendation based on their experts and their reports to deny this. So with that, do I have a motion to deny the special use permit for this site because the drive-through, for the reasons detailed in the staff report, and because of the parking, building height, and setback regulations based on the findings detailed in the staff report, and to deny this special use permit for this site because of the lack of consistency with the city engineering standards?
So moved.
Second.
We will take a vote. All those in favor of the denial of the special use permit?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Is there anything else from the city, or did we conduct our other business during the recess?
Everything else.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.